Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the Chicago Red Stars and their run through the preliminary round of the NWSL 2020 Utah Challenge Cup. I'll be going over the formations, the lineups, how I thought they did at following each game, and I'll basically just be discussing the result and what I think we can learn from each game. And at the end I'll be giving my thoughts about what they need to improve on going forward into the quarterfinals. As always, timestamps will be in the description below, so let's get started. The Chicago Red Stars played their first game in the Challenge Cup against the Washington Spirit, and they lost 2-1. They came out in a 4-2-3-1 formation with Alyssa Nair, Casey Short, Sarah Gordon, Zoe Morse, Bianca St. George, Morgan Gautreau, Julie Ertz, Kaylee Watt, Vanessa DiBernardo, Rachel Hill, and Yuki Nagasato all in the starting lineup. This game, the midfield was absolutely nowhere to be found. I have no idea why, because it wasn't a different midfield from the year before. Morgan Bryan couldn't get on the ball, Vanessa DiBernardo couldn't get on the ball, Julie Ertz couldn't get on the ball. It was just a disaster in terms of possession within the center of the field. Casey Short got caught up a handful of times down the left side of and I've mentioned this before, but if you're an outside back and you get caught up super high, it leaves a space in behind. Basically all throughout the first half, Casey Short was getting caught up, and Ashley Hatch was able to take advantage of that space as she was leaving it behind. And Ashley Hatch was faster and stronger than Sarah Gordon, so she was winning that 1v1 battle. And again, that could have been prevented if Casey Short just would have dropped and not stayed as high up as she was, because this happened multiple times. She was just getting caught out of position. Not to mention, Chicago is playing a super high line in their back, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you don't have a defender who's really fast to be able to catch up, all they're going to do is send balls over top, because there's space in between the defensive line and the goalkeeper where you can just drop a ball in and you'll have enough time to run onto it. It's tricky for the goalkeeper because Alyssa Nair is like, okay, do I come out and kick it or do I stay in my goal? And so again, there's nothing wrong with playing a high line because it's good to keep things compact, but if you don't read the situation correctly to notice when the other team is getting ready to kick it, then you're going to get caught out of position and you're going to get caught in those situations where Ashley Hatch is just running at your keeper, and we noticed that happen a few times. Up top, I felt like Kaylee Watt got herself into good opportunities in the wide space. She would pull wide, get the ball, and I feel like that's where she's best. I like her better getting the ball wide, dribbling 1v1 and making a cross than I do at seeing her as like a lone striker, because I feel like she isn't utilized best to her talents in that position. I feel like Kaylee Watt was the best forward on the field for Chicago. She was creating chances and she was actually trying to run at the goal and take shots. I was not impressed at all with Rachel Hill. I felt like she had chances to score and chances to create something more with the opportunity she had, but her touch would let her down, or she didn't have enough skill to beat her defender 1v1, or just in general, she wasn't strong enough or fast enough or quick enough to be able to pull off what you could see she wanted to do, and the defender would get it and the entire attack would just die out. And we've noticed that a lot throughout this game and through this tournament with her. The first goal they got scored on because Sarah Gordon tried to dribble out of the back. She ended up losing the ball to Rose Lavelle, who took advantage of this, dribbled down the center of the field, played a nice through ball to Ashley Hatch, who got her shot off, and Alyssa Nair made a great initial save, but it rebounded right to Rose Lavelle, who just kicked it in the upper 90. This is just a tricky situation because it happened so fast. And defensively, every single person was just caught out. Oh, and I guess they were expecting Alyssa to make that save or to make that catch, and so when it rebounded, nobody was ready to try to pick up the loose ball, and Rose Lavelle ended up capitalizing on that opportunity. The second goal, again, it's unfortunate for Chicago because, again, Alyssa Nair made a mistake in goal and ended up losing the ball in her own 18 to Ashley Hatch, who just passed it in the goal. That's unfortunate because, again, that can be prevented literally so easily. Just kick it or just play it sooner. Again, people make mistakes. Goalkeepers make mistakes. This isn't the first time we've seen this in the men's or in the women's game. Again, it was just unfortunate because I feel like Chicago could have come back from that 1-0. Roosevelt tried to poke the ball out in a sort of half clearance and ended up going right to Morgan Gautreau, who just placed it in the bottom corner. So that was a great goal from her. I feel like Morgan Gautreau was probably one of the better players on the field for Chicago because you could see she was actually trying to create opportunities, but I just feel like in terms of chemistry, the entire team was off. They're without Sam Kerr, and that's a huge part of their team. She scored literally half of the team's goals last season, and she's gone to play for Chelsea, and so now it's like, who do we put in her spot to fill her shoes. You can't fill her shoes. She's just one of the best players in the world. So now I feel like their team identity is completely thrown off. They don't have a game plan that doesn't revolve around a single forward up top doing the work for them. And so I think right now Chicago's kind of going through like a crisis because they're like, uh-oh, our game plan is gone. Like, we don't have a game plan because one of our key players isn't playing for us anymore. And so now they're trying to rebuild and try different formations and different plays, and it's just not working for them. The second game of the preliminary rounds, the Chicago Red Stars played the Portland Thorns, and they tied 0-0. They came out with a completely different formation and lineup. They came out in a 4-3-3 with Emily Boyd, Julia Bingham, Hannah Davison, Kayla Sharples, Zoe Goralski, Savannah McCaskill, Danielle Colaprico, Ella Stevens, Mackenzie Doniak, Sarah Lubert, and Katie Johnson all starting. Just like the previous game, Chicago had absolutely no movement in the midfield. I feel like the first 10 minutes they did, and players like Ella Stevens and Danielle Colaprico were getting on the ball, but Portland kind of found their way into the game and were having majority of the possession, to the point to where Chicago just could not get the ball. And when they would have the ball, there was no movement, there was no energy in the middle of the field, so they had no outlet, which then forced them to go down the sides and they would just lose it, or they'd try to kick it and they'd lose it, and just nothing was working. On their counterattack, you'd see players like Savannah McCaskill get the ball, and instead of just dribbling at the back line 1v1, she would try to hold the ball and wait for help, but the entire team couldn't shift forward quick enough to the point to where it was allowing Portland time to get back defensively. I feel like Savannah McCaskill is great at hold-up play, but hold-up play is not going to work if players like Rachel Hill or Kaylee Watt don't get forward to help her or try to actively get themselves into positions where they can receive the ball, and we weren't seeing that at all. Like I said, this was allowing Portland time to get back defensively, so they would just shut down that play entirely, to the point to where Chicago had no options going forward, and then they'd have to go backwards, which is exactly what Portland wanted them to do. I think in general both teams didn't play well. You could see them both trying to work their way into the game, both trying to keep possession, but their touches were off, the passes were sloppy. I was not impressed at all with Mackenzie Doniak, Sarah Lubert, or Katie Johnson. I just don't feel like the game plan Chicago wants to play works for any of the forwards they have. And I don't think Rory Dames knows how to properly use the forwards he has. They all have talent individually. He's not using them in a way that their talent is being almost in a way increased by the other players around them. Defensively, I was actually pretty impressed with Sharples and Davison both together as center backs. I thought they actually played out of the back really well. But again, Portland didn't really have any sort of threatening chances, so I don't really think that they were properly tested, but I was impressed with them initially. Genuinely, this game was just awful. Both teams, I was not impressed with what they came out with. I didn't see any sort of style of play. There were no solid opportunities on goal, and it was honestly awful. It was bad. Third game, the Chicago Red Stars played the North Carolina Courage, and they lost 1-0. They came out in a 4-3-2-1 formation with Alyssa Nair, Bianca St. George, Julie Ertz, Sarah Gordon, Casey Short, Danielle Colaprico, Morgan Gautreau, Vanessa DiBernardo, Kaylee Watt, Rachel Hill, and Yuki Nagasato all in the starting lineup. Dude, this game was awful. Chicago was awful. There was no movement in the center of the park. There was no movement up top. Defensively, they were terrible. It was just bad in every single aspect of the game, and there seems to be no direction. They didn't come out with any type of game plan against North Carolina. In the second half, our midfield was exhausted from having to chase the game, and our defense was exhausted from having to defend our hearts out, to the point to where we just got stretched. North Carolina was able to score off of a corner kick. They played a short corner, and anytime a team plays a short corner and you know they're going to build it around the top, the first thing you have to do is you have to step as a team, because if you don't, if one person doesn't step, the entire team is still on the sides. The ball gets to Jaylene Daniels and she goes to make her cross in. Most of the players for Chicago's back line have stepped up, but there's one player who doesn't, and that's Bianca St. George. She stays back, which allows Abby Urseg to be on side, which allows her to get behind the center backs who were stepping because they were supposed to step as a unit. If every single person in the back line steps, it leaves the forwards off sides, and so then the play doesn't count. So Abby Urseg was able to slip in behind and be completely unmarked while staying on sides to get her head on the ball, and she scored. They got scored on so late in the game, and again, they have no player off the bench who's even close to being threatening, to the point to where they just couldn't bounce back from that. The last game they played was against the Utah Royals, and they won 1-0. They came out in a 4-1-4-1 formation with Alyssa Nair, Sarah Gordon, Julie Ertz, Tierna Davidson, Casey Short, Danielle Colaprico, Morgan Gautreau, Vanessa DiBernardo, Savannah McCaskill, Rachel Hill, and Kaylee Watt. You could clearly tell they wanted to get a result in the last game of the preliminary round, and that's exactly what they came out and did. They came out with more energy than they did the first 3 games of this tournament, and you could clearly tell that they were actually trying to actively bring a plan and try to score and try to create opportunities. I'd say that in the first half, both teams were pretty equal in terms of their possession, but Chicago definitely had more of the opportunities in the final third than Utah did. Something to note is Chicago definitely brought their A team, but I don't feel like Utah did. They were clearly resting some key players like Amy Rodriguez and Vera Buquete, and in the second half you could clearly tell Chicago was trying to get a result, and I think Casey Short should have had a penalty kick. Now I haven't gone back and watched it, so I'll put it on the screen, but I mean, come on, to me it looked like she got pulled down, and so I just think in general the referees have been absolutely awful this entire tournament, but Casey Short ended up getting her goal anyway, sort of like poetic justice. Savannah McCaskill played a great cross into Casey Short, who beat Kelly O'Hara and got her head on the ball, and she ended up getting her goal. I'm glad Tierna got some minutes. She came off in the 30th minute. That was clearly planned. She's a huge part of this team. In general, although they got the win and they got the 3 points, I'm genuinely still not impressed in any way, shape, or form because our outside back scored the goal. There's nothing wrong with defender scoring, but our outside back has scored more goals than any of our forwards combined. This game, yes, they got the result, but it was in no way promising or threatening or even relieving going into the quarterfinals. My thoughts going into the quarterfinals are not positive, and I'm sure none of y'all's are either. We have absolutely no energy up top except for Savannah McCaskill and Kaylee Watt. Fuck it. Put Bianca St. George up top. She actually brings energy to the field. Put Morgan Bryant up top. Bro, put anybody up top. Anybody who can actually take a shot on goal. Put Casey Short up top. Mackenzie Doniak does absolutely nothing. She was good in college. She was good on the youth national team, but I feel like she's never been able to transition her game into the NWSL. And Rachel Hill, again, I'm not impressed with her in any way. I was never impressed with her in Orlando. I felt like she has speed and she's aggressive, and I appreciate her work rate, but as a soccer player, I don't see her produce anything, really. It'd be one thing if she was good at hold-up play or good at distributing the ball or had super good vision, but I still feel like in general those things aren't there either. I think Katie Johnson has a lot of skill, so I definitely think if anybody's going to start, it should be her. She's technical in the way that she likes to play slip passes and little flicks, but again, we haven't seen anything substantial from her either. I think we need Ertz in the midfield. Put someone else as center back. We need Julia Ertz so badly. She's strong defensively, but she's so good with her vision going forward and her distribution. Her long balls are fantastic. Again, in the midfield, I was not impressed with DiBernardo. I was not impressed with Nagasato. I feel like in terms of the type of players they are, you think of them as more of attacking midfielder roles, because Morgan Gautreau and Danielle Colaprico, I think of them at least more as holding midfielders, and I feel like they've done a great job this tournament. I just think in general they are in a transition phase where they're trying to find a game plan that will work for everybody on the field, and again, they just didn't have enough time prior to this tournament to have enough training sessions to really get that team chemistry down, and because of all the things I've mentioned before, I just cannot see Chicago getting very far in this tournament. I can't see them doing good. That's all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know how you think Chicago is going to do in the quarterfinals and throughout the rest of this tournament. Do you think they're going to go far? Also, let me know, is this what you were expecting from Chicago? Were you expecting something else? Or was this exactly how you thought they were going to play? I'm really interested to know what you guys have to think about this. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!